I found the ultrasound photo in the junk drawer under the batteries and the takeout menus. Not in a sweet little envelope, not on the fridge like normal people. It was folded like a secret, creased twice like it had been opened and closed a dozen times. And the moment I saw the name printed at the top, I knew something was off. Because it was not our clinic, not our doctor, not even our city. It was the kind of detail your brain catches before your heart is ready. I stood there in my kitchen, holding that thin, glossy paper like it could burn me. And behind me, the dishwasher hummed like nothing in the world had changed. I had been married to Marissa for 6 years, long enough to know her laugh, her perfume, her habits, and long enough to know when the air in a room shifts because someone is lying. I turned the photo over, and there was a note in her handwriting. Just 3 words. Do not freak out. Which is basically a professional invitation to freak out. I kept my face calm because I have learned that panic is expensive, and I waited. I folded the photo back the exact way it had been folded, like a crime scene technician, and I slid it right back into the drawer. Then I washed my hands, even though they were not dirty, because something about the whole thing made me feel contaminated. Marissa came home an hour later with a bag of groceries, and that too bright smile she uses when she has already rehearsed the conversation. She kissed my cheek, too quick, like a stamp, and said, "Hey babe, we need to talk," I said. "Sure, about what?" And I watched her eyes flick toward the junk drawer, just a flick, but it landed like a spotlight. She set the groceries down like she was arranging props. Then she pulled out the ultrasound photo and held it up like a peace offering. "See," she said. "I am pregnant." I nodded slowly like I was watching a weather report. "Congratulations," I said. And that is when her smile wobbled. Because that is not the reaction she wanted. She wanted tears or joy or questions. Not calm scares liars. She took a breath and went right to the part she had practiced. Before you say anything, it does not matter who the biological father is. The most important thing is who raises the child. She said it like it was a quote from a motivational poster. I stared at her, and in that second, my brain ran through the last 6 months like security footage. The late yoga classes that never came with a yoga mat smell. The new password on her phone. The way she started wearing perfume to the grocery store. And the night she came home with a bruised-looking lipstick smear and told me the car heater was acting weird. I set my mug down carefully, because if I held it, I might crush it. "Marissa," I said, "you just told me you are pregnant, and you want me to skip the part where you explain how." She exhaled sharply, and her tone turned sharp too. "I made a mistake," she said, "but I am telling you now, and I am giving you a chance to do the right thing." "The right thing," I repeated, like it tasted bad. She stepped closer and lowered her voice, like she was trying to make the lie sound intimate. "I want us to be a family," she said. "You are my husband. You have the stable job, the house, the benefits, and you are good at showing up." She said that last part like it was a compliment, and I almost laughed, because nothing says love like being valued for dental coverage and emotional availability. I looked at the ultrasound again, and I noticed the date. It was from 8 weeks ago, which meant she had known for 2 months, and in those 2 months, she had still let me plan our anniversary weekend. Still let me fix the leaking sink. Still let me hand her my credit card at brunch without blinking. My calm cracked just enough to let one sentence through. "Whose is it?" I asked. Marissa lifted her chin, and that wobble turned into defiance. "That is not the point," she said. "I told you the point. The point is raising the child. The point is moving forward." And then she did something I did not expect. She reached for my hand like we were about to pray, and she said, "I need you to promise me you will not embarrass me, because my parents already know and they are coming over tonight." I blinked, because that was not a conversation. That was a schedule. "They already know," I said. Marissa nodded quickly. "They understand," she said. "They support me. And honestly, they think you will come around once you calm down." I did not have time to react, because right then the doorbell rang, and through the front window I saw her father and mother stepping up our porch like they owned it. Her dad in his crisp jacket. Her mom holding a bakery box like this was a celebration. My stomach went cold. Marissa opened the door before I could even stand, and her mother swept inside with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Sweetie," she said to Marissa, and then she looked at me like I was a clerk who had charged her wrong. Her father clapped me on the shoulder a little too hard and said, "Champ, you are going to be a dad." And he said it loudly, like a performance, like the neighbors should hear. I stood there and did the only thing I could do in that moment. I smiled, not warm, not friendly, just controlled, and I said, "Wow, you all move fast." Marissa gave me a warning look. Her mother set the bakery box down and said, "We are here to talk about solutions, not drama," her father added. "The important thing is the family unit." And I almost admired the coordination, like they had been rehearsing in a group chat. Marissa slipped her hand into mine again, tight, and she said, "Tell them you are with me. Tell them you are not going to make this ugly. Because if you do," she lowered her voice so only I could hear, "I will take everything. I will take the house, I will take the accounts, I will take your peace, and you will still end up raising this baby, because a judge will see a married couple and do the math." I looked at her, at the woman I married, who now spoke like a hostage negotiator, and I realized something that made my pulse slow instead of spike. She thought I had no options. She thought my only choices were humiliation or surrender, and that meant she had stopped watching for the third option, the quiet one, the one you do not notice until it is already done. I squeezed her hand back gently, and I said, "Okay." And her shoulders loosened like she had won. Her parents smiled like the audience at the end of a play, and right then my phone buzzed on the counter. One single notification lighting up the screen, a message preview from a name I did not recognize, and the first line said, "Hey man, she told me you do not know." I froze just long enough for Marissa to see my face change, and she lunged for the phone. But I was faster. I picked it up, and as the rest of the message loaded, I felt the trap closing, and I also felt something else, a door opening, because whoever had texted me, they had just made a mistake. They had reached into my life without realizing I now had their number, and I smiled again, this time for real, because the plan was already forming, and nobody in that room had the slightest idea yet. I turned my phone slightly so Marissa could not snatch it, and I read the message again like it was a receipt I needed to keep. "Hey man, she told me you do not know. I just want to say I did not sign up for drama." That was the first line. Then more text loaded. And every new word felt like someone adding weight to a scale, he wrote. "I thought you two were basically done. She said you were more like roommates. She said you would not care. But now she is saying I need to stay away because you might freak out. I am not trying to blow up your life. I just need to know what is going on." And then his name signed at the bottom like he was emailing customer support. Trevor. I kept my face neutral, but inside my brain was already screenshotting the whole thing. Because I have learned that truth is fragile unless you save it. Marissa was smiling too hard at her parents, talking about baby names like this was a cute surprise. Her mother was slicing the bakery cake without asking, like she was cutting my opinion into portions, and her father was already doing math out loud about how close the baby would be to his birthday. I slid my phone into my pocket, and I said, "I am going to wash up." Then I walked to the hallway bathroom, closed the door, and locked it. Because yes, I lock doors in my own house now. Welcome to adulthood. I took quick screenshots of the entire message thread, including the phone number at the top. Then I turned off message previews on my lock screen. Then I opened my notes app and typed 3 things: date of ultrasound, Trevor number, and the exact sentence Marissa said about taking everything. I did not need to write that last one down for memory. I needed it for war. When I came back out, the kitchen smelled like coffee and frosting, like a party thrown at a crime scene. Marissa looked up with a little too much relief, and she said, "There you are." Her mom pressed a plate into my hand. "Vanilla," she said. "It is calming." I bit the cake and nodded like a polite hostage. Then I said, "So you all already knew?" Her dad leaned back in his chair and said, "We found out recently, and it is a blessing." I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then I said, "And you know the baby is not mine." Her mother did not even blink. She said, "Biology is not everything. What matters is stability and commitment." And Marissa jumped in fast. "Exactly," she said. And I watched her eyes. She was not looking at me like a partner. She was watching my reactions like a handler. Her father cleared his throat and said, "We also want to make sure you understand the practical side. Marissa is pregnant. She will need support. And a lot of husbands step up in moments like this." He said husbands like the word itself was a leash. I asked, "What do you mean by practical side?" And her mother smiled like she had been waiting. She said, "We mean you should not do anything rash. No threats, no yelling, no leaving. Because if you do, it will look terrible for you." I nodded slowly, like I was absorbing a lecture, but inside I was counting exits. Marissa reached over and touched my wrist, gentle but firm, like she was holding down a lid, and she said, "We can get through this." And I almost said, "We are not the ones getting through it, you are." But I stayed calm, because calm is a weapon. And I said, "Okay, what are you asking me to do?" Her father answered first. "We are asking you to be a man," he said. "To stay, to protect your family, to keep things quiet." He lowered his voice, "And to sign whatever needs to be signed." I looked at him. "Sign what?" Her mother waved a hand like it was obvious. "Medical forms, insurance, anything the doctor needs. And later we can discuss updating the will. Just basic responsible stuff." I felt my mouth go dry, because there it was, the real plan: lock me in on paper, then dare me to leave. Marissa squeezed my wrist a little harder, and she said, "See, they are just trying to help." I smiled at all of them and said, "You know what? You are right. We should do this properly." And you could actually see relief spread across their faces like sunshine. Marissa exhaled like she had been holding her breath for months, and her mother said, "That is the attitude." Then her father lifted his coffee cup and said, "To new beginnings." I raised my mug too and said, "To planning ahead," and I meant it in a way they did not understand. After they left, Marissa followed me around the house like a victory lap. She leaned against the counter and said, "I knew you would be rational." And I said, "I am always rational." Then she did the thing she does when she thinks she has control. She started listing tasks. "We should repaint the spare room." She said, "We should look at cribs. We should combine finances fully since a baby is coming." And there it was again. The leash. I turned and looked at her. "Combined finances fully," I repeated. And she smiled. "Yes," she said. "It just makes sense. Also, my parents think we should put the house into both our names officially, since we are a family." She said it like she was asking to pick up milk. My hands stayed still. My face stayed calm, but my brain screamed because the house was already in both our names, and she knew that, which meant she was fishing. Testing how much I knew. Testing whether I was paying attention. I shrugged and said, "We can talk about that soon. Tonight I am tired." She stepped closer. Her voice turned low and sharp again. "Do not stall me," she said. "I am not playing. I have options. You do not want to see what I can do in court." I held her gaze and said, "I hear you," then I added, "And I do not want to see what you can do to our dishwasher either, because it is the only thing in this house that still runs consistently." She frowned, not sure if I was joking. Then she turned away and said, "Good, because I need you on my side." And that was the moment I decided she would never again get to define what my side meant. That night, after she fell asleep with one hand on her stomach like she was practicing motherhood for an audience, I sat in my home office with the door closed, my laptop open, and the kind of quiet that feels loud. I typed Trevor into my contacts and stared at the number. Then I opened our joint bank app and checked the recent transactions, and my stomach tightened again, because there were charges I did not recognize. A hotel name 30 minutes away, a boutique I had never heard of, and a prenatal clinic in the other city. All on days she told me she was at yoga, micro twist number 1. She had been using our money to build the lie. I clicked into statements and downloaded the last 6 months. Then I made a folder on my desktop labeled Taxes 2026. Because if anyone ever looks, it should look boring. Inside, I created subfolders, statements, screenshots, messages, and then I remembered Trevor said, I did not sign up for drama, which meant he might panic, and panicked people talk. I opened my messages and typed, Trevor, it is me. I appreciate you reaching out. I am not here to fight you. I just want the truth. Can we talk tomorrow? Then I deleted it. Because too polite looks fake. I typed again, Trevor, I got your message. I am not going to do anything crazy. I just need details. Call me at lunch. Then I hit send. And I stared at the screen like it might answer back. My phone buzzed 5 minutes later. An incoming call from an unknown number. I declined, because I like being the one who sets the time. Then a text came through. Not from Trevor, from Marissa, even though she was asleep in the next room. And it said, I can hear your keyboard. Go to bed. And the way my skin went cold told me she was not asleep at all. She was listening, monitoring, waiting for a slip. I slowly closed my laptop without making a sound. I stood up, and I walked to the bedroom like a man going to his own trial. Marissa was lying on her side, facing the wall, eyes closed. Perfect performance. I slid into bed and stared at the ceiling, and in the dark, I realized something else. If she was monitoring me this closely, it meant she was scared too. And fear makes people careless, and careless people leave trails. In the morning, she acted normal again, syrupy even. She made pancakes. She kissed my cheek. She asked if I could stop by the insurance office and add her to something. Anything. She was pushing papers already, I said. Sure. And I meant sure I will stop by. But not for what you think. I went to work, smiled at coworkers, answered emails, played my role. And at exactly noon, my phone rang again. This time the caller ID said, Trevor. I stepped outside into the cold air, and I answered. Trevor, I said. He sounded nervous. Like he was calling a teacher after cheating on a test. Hey, he said. Look, I do not want problems. I said. Then we agree on something. Tell me everything. And there was a pause, and then he said, She told me you were controlling, that you would explode. She told me you two were basically separated, but still living together because of money. She told me you did not touch her anymore. He rushed the words like he wanted to get them out fast. I laughed once, quiet, because if I did not laugh, I might break. I said, Trevor, how long have you known my wife? He hesitated, then said, Since late spring, and I pictured the exact weekend she insisted on visiting her parents alone. I said, Where did you meet? And he said, At a charity fundraiser her dad invited me to. I froze. Charity fundraiser. Her dad invited him. That was not an affair that happened by accident. That was a door opened on purpose. I said, You met her through her father? Yes, he said. He said she could use a friend. And my breath went shallow. Because now the story was changing shape. This was not just betrayal. It was coordination. I kept my voice steady. Trevor, I said. Did her parents know about you? And he did not answer right away. Then he said, Her mom asked me once if I was ready for responsibility. I thought she was joking, and I stared at the street in front of my office, cars passing, people living normal lives, and I realized Marissa was not just cheating. She was building a replacement story with a committee. I said, Okay, Trevor, I need one thing. Send me any proof you have, messages, dates, anything. He said, I do not want to get dragged into court. And I said, Then do not let them drag you. Because right now you are the only person who can prove I did not agree to this. And he went quiet again. Then he said, She is going to hate me. And I said, She already hates the version of you that tells the truth. So pick who you want to be. And after a long pause, he said, Fine. I will send what I have. But you cannot tell her it came from me. And I said, I will not have to. Because she is going to tell on herself eventually. I hung up, and within minutes my phone started lighting up with forwarded screenshots, long message threads, voice notes transcribed, dates, locations, and one photo that made my stomach turn. A selfie of them in front of a hotel mirror, fully clothed, smiling like tourists. And in the corner of the frame, on the dresser, was a brochure with my last name printed on it, because it was from a conference I attended months ago, which meant she had taken him to a hotel using my discounted corporate rate. I stared at that brochure and felt something click into place. This was not just personal, it was financial, it was legal, it was a setup. And now I had enough to start my plan. I just needed to play my part a little longer, and when I walked back inside, my phone buzzed again. A new text from Marissa, do not forget. My appointment is tomorrow, you are coming. And I typed back, of course. And I smiled, because tomorrow I would be sitting in a clinic, listening to her lie with a sweet voice, while my real work would be happening somewhere she never bothered to look, right under the surface of the life she thought she controlled. The next day I sat beside Marissa at the clinic and held her hand like a supportive husband, while my other hand kept my phone angled down, recording audio, not for drama, for accuracy. The nurse asked for details. Marissa answered smoothly. And when the nurse asked if I was the father, Marissa cut in fast. We are married, she said. We are a team. I nodded and smiled like a statue. Then the nurse handed me a stack of forms, consent, billing, emergency contact, and one page titled Acknowledgement of Paternity. My heart stayed calm, my pen did not move. I said, I will review these at home. Marissa's smile tightened. Her mom, who had somehow appeared in the waiting room, said, do not be difficult, and that was my cue. I stood up politely and said, I just want to do this correctly. Then I walked to the desk and asked for copies of everything, including itemized billing. The receptionist printed them, and Marissa watched like I was stealing air. On the drive home, she hissed, sign today, or I will file and take the house, I said. You should do what you think is best. And she blinked, because I did not beg. That night while she slept, I emailed my lawyer the clinic forms and Trevor's screenshots. Then I opened our joint account and quietly moved my paycheck into my separate account that Marissa had mocked me for keeping. I labeled it Taxes Reserve, and I finally understood the power of boring names. By morning, her phone was buzzing. The bank had sent a notification, and Marissa stared at me like I had just spoken a new language. I smiled and said, good news. I'm getting organized. Just like your parents wanted. Marissa's parents came over that evening with the same bakery box, like they had a subscription. Her dad sat at my table and slid a folder toward me. Inside was a post-nup draft. My name was on every page like a target, her mom said. This protects everyone, Marissa said. Sign and we move on. I flipped to the last page and saw a clause that made my jaw go still. It locked me into financial support regardless of paternity. I closed the folder gently and said, I will have my attorney review it. Her father laughed, then stopped laughing when I did not join. Marissa leaned in and whispered, you cannot afford a lawyer? I said. You would be surprised what I can afford when I stop funding hotel mirrors. Her mother's face changed. Just a flicker, but enough. And in that flicker, I knew they had been spending my money too. The next morning, Marissa acted sweet again and asked for my phone to order groceries. I handed it over unlocked because I had already switched everything important. New passwords, new two-factor, new email filters. She scrolled too long, then smiled like she won. But she did not notice the tiny email alert on my laptop, a receipt forwarded by my bank. Her dad had used our joint card at the same hotel again. Not Marissa, her dad. I printed it and slid it into my taxes folder. Then I called Trevor and said, did you ever meet her parents there? He went quiet, then said, her dad paid once and joked, I owed him a grandson. My stomach dropped and my plan hardened, because now it was not just betrayal, it was a business deal, and I was the wallet they planned to keep. Marissa filed first like she promised. She strutted into mediation with her parents and a lawyer who talked fast. They expected me to panic. Instead, I walked in with my attorney and a neat binder, screenshots, receipts, clinic forms, and the audio where she said biology did not matter, but money did. Her lawyer frowned. Marissa's smile slipped. Her dad leaned forward and whispered like a director. My attorney asked for a court-ordered paternity test and temporary financial separation, then slid the hotel receipt with her father's name across the table. Her mother went pale. The mediator raised eyebrows, and for the first time, Marissa looked at her parents like she was not sure who was using who. I kept my voice calm and said, "I will support what is mine. I will not bankroll what is not." And that line landed like a door locking. The paternity test came back and the room went silent except Marissa's breathing. Not mine. Not his. The mediator spoke gently. Not the husband. Marissa snapped that it should not matter. Then her lawyer quietly asked her parents why they paid hotel bills. Her dad tried to joke. Nobody laughed. The judge approved separation of finances and struck the support clause. Marissa tried the last threat. "I will ruin you." I looked at her and said, "You tried? You just forgot I read my own statements? The settlement gave her what was fair and nothing extra? No house buyout? No access to my accounts?" And when she walked out with her parents arguing behind her, I walked out alone with my dignity intact. Because the best revenge is letting people hear their own lies in a quiet room.